joining us tonight. We're really excited to have Michael on talking with us tonight. We do ask that kind of during the presentation that you keep your microphones off. That way we don't get any of the background noise coming in. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to use the chat icon. I'll be on here kind of fielding all of the questions to Michael as we go through, or kind of waiting until the end to kind of ask them. So feel free to kind of type in there. It's really nice if you want to type in the chat where everybody is coming from. It's always great to see how far people are coming from, which these have been really great in a way to bring people together, which is kind of a very unique situation that I think is really awesome. It's the one bonus of this pandemic is being able to bring everybody together to enjoy artist talks, which for some reason never really happened like this until all of this happened. So, we've had people from all over the country on these already. So I don't know if we've had any people from out of the country on them yet. Maybe Canada, if that counts, but give it just one more minute and we're going to jump right in. I've got someone else from Canada on here. That's great.
International. Woo, woo.
Yeah. Well, everybody's surviving quarantine. It seems like things are starting to lighten up in some areas, but it seems like people are still kind of staying in their house, which is probably for the best in some ways, kind of depending on where you are. So these have been real great to be able to get people together, and it's always great to be able to see people's faces, which in a time where you're not getting to interact with people in person, this is about as good as it gets. So I have been loving doing these and being able to see all that. So so yeah, we're gonna jump right in. So as I said, on this week's artist, we got Michael Nashef, who is a very talented, do you go by metalsmith? I don't even know what kind of we go by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes really fabulous work. I'm gonna let him talk about it. He happens to be on our board at Touchstone Center for Crafts, so it's really wonderful to have him here. I have heard his talk once, which I think is absolutely one of the best talks I've heard. So I am really excited to sit down and be able to listen to what he's been up to and hear his talk again. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you. And hello, everyone.
Yeah, so what have you been up to since the pandemic hit? Has it been slowed down your studio process? Have you been able to get in and do some work, or?
Yeah, obviously I've been growing my beard. For the people who seen me for the first time, I usually never had a beard, so that's new. But yeah, for my work, it's been a little bit on and off, depends. The pandemic limited some of the access for a couple projects I was working on to finish. But in general, actually, I was able to finish about, I think, a couple other projects. And I was very happy with the result. And one of the big things I've been working on, which I will tap on a little bit in the presentation, is basically making these little gadgets that I make, the jewelry saw blade holder, which allowed me to make like a whole new micro factory, if you might say. And that's been taking majority of my time. But yeah, I've been able to do decent amount of work. I actually work for another company in Colorado where I do some CAD design for them too. So yeah.
So you sound like you're a very busy guy. I mean, you have all of these like products that you've been making and selling. You've got the aprons, you got the saw blade storage, and not to mention you kind of run I wouldn't say like a fine jewelry kind of business on top of your other practice as well.
Yes. I mean, in some, like the COVID thing that happened, or the pandemic when it happened, you know, a lot of people weren't able to work, and I'm, you know, luckily from my end, that didn't happen because I was actually already been doing stuff from home. So in some sense, like I was doing more work while the pandemic was happening, right? But yeah, I've been busy, which is good. I can't complain, I guess. That's all. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like on the pandemic, even though you have, I don't know, everyone's like confined to their house. I mean, you have this home studio, which is great.
Yep.
It seems like I know in the beginning, but at least for a lot of artists I've talked to, it's kind of slow going just with everything going on, with just like the thought of everything going on. But it sounds like you were able to kind of power through and keep things moving.
Yes, luckily I have, and the fact that I have my own studio, like in my house, I have the room I'm sitting in right now, which is kind of like an office room, but that's basically my studio. And I have some casting equipment, so I could actually cast in my garage if I need to. And I could actually 3D print even with my printers and use these prints to cast. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna show you guys a little bit of my studio here, so that will kind of give you an idea of what I do. But I've been, you know, I guess collecting tools, you would say, for the last maybe, I don't know, 15, 18 years. So I have decent, like I'm able to run from my studio pretty much anything I need to do. So yeah.
I think this is a perfect time to jump in and you show us your studio since
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let me see if I can do this right. So I need to share, right? Let's see this one. All right, so I think it's working. There we go. So, all right. So basically, this is the door, and I have a milling machine here and a press. I obviously some books. Over here, you guys will see that I have a it's a 3D machine called Amber. It's a super high detailed machine. Usually, I do pieces that are you know, they are like very fine, high quality. I'll show you an example of them. Actually, something like this, very, very high detailed, right? Then I have a few other machines here. You're gonna see that I use a lot of 3D printing. I have a big safe that it has tons of my resources or precious metal and things like this. That's my bench. It's fully loaded with pliers, GRS system, engraver, plating machine, and you know, I don't know what, that's 12 shelves filled up with tools and equipment and whatever. So, oh, and my pride is this little table that I have here that I kind of refurbished and brought life to it from scratch with this vice. So that's it. That's basically what I have for my studio. I do have another studio which I will show you in the presentation. It's in a different location. It's basically the office or the mini factory that I will be talking about a little bit. And I do have the machines in my garage, which sadly I'm not going to be able to show you because it looks like there's a bomb went off in my garage. Like I need to clean that thing. So we're not going to look at it right now. Sorry.
So I like seeing your studio. It seemed like for such a small space, you have so much stuff in there. You know, it seems like you are a pretty organized person and, you know, you really make that small space work for you, which is, I mean, I love seeing people's spaces and kind of like, wait, I don't know. There's always this like big, I guess, like misconception in people's heads. Like, I know, like coming out of undergrad and all that stuff, like the thought of setting up a studio is really daunting. And you're like, oh, how do you make this work? And then you like really see what some people work in. I mean, it looks like, I mean, how like about the size of your studio. It's not huge, but it works. You know, you're able to do probably most of what you need to do in that space. It's just kind of organizing and getting everything set up right in there.
Yeah, yeah. Regarding, I mean, the only thing that I don't really do much of anyway is raising, which I've done it, but it's not, you know, my cup of tea, I guess. But when it comes to really mixing the concrete pieces or work on the concrete parts that I usually do, I either use this table that you have here, I'll actually cover it with some really nice thick paper and I'll do the work here. Or if it's nice weather outside, I'll just do it outside. It's that simple. Or in the garage too. So now Michigan weather, you guys know that it's really cold here. So that we have like 6 months where you can't really work in the garage. So I just end up doing it here. But other than that, I mean, you're gonna have to use what you have. The other option is for me to get a bigger house, which then I have to work harder and I don't want to move. So we're good. This is good what I have right now. That's awesome. I like it.
Yeah, I love studios just because I really think it is like, it's amazing what you can do with certain spaces and kind of how you adapt to work in certain spaces. You know, that seems to
Absolutely.
like it fits like what you need to do, and you do have kind of the other
Yeah.
space to work out of, which I would love to ask you more questions about it, but I'm going to hold off on that since I know you said you're going to talk about it in your presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for showing us your space. I know that's also often kind of like a weird thing for artists to open their studio up, depending. I know some people are pretty weary about it, but I absolutely love seeing people's spaces. Me and Dean were talking about your killer pencil that's on the wall. I love
Oh yeah. Like this
decorated
one
too.
here. I'll show to you guys this big pencil up here.
You really have like a pretty, it looks like a fun space to spend your time in, you know?
It
I think
is. I mean, I have like
studio.
stuff from different. I haven't actually hung everything on the wall, to be honest with you. Like it's just been, I don't know, you forget or busy. But that pencil been with me since I cannot start from the first day I was start going to school as an artist here. It was a gift from my brother, so it's about 20 years old actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
If you want, we can jump right into your slides.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Again, if you have questions kind of throughout his slide talk, just feel free to write them in that chat, and then I will pass them along to him as we go, or kind of follow up at the end of the talk.
Okay, so you guys are able to see my the name, right? The slide. Okay, good. So hello everyone. If you haven't met me before, my name is Michael Nashef, and oops, there we go. Okay, so I have some fun facts. I'm originally from Lebanon. I came to the United States in 1998. The United States is, you can fit actually about 946 Lebanons in the United States. This is how big Lebanon is. If you guys can see my mouse, it is literally smaller than Michigan, right? Basically we're located in the Middle East. There are 3 continents surrounding us: Europe, Asia, and Africa. And yes, we do have snow in Lebanon. Not a lot of people know that, but we have tons of snow there. Okay. First taste of art in Lebanon. My dad used to own a backpack factory. We also did a lot of leather work. My brother and I helped my dad in the factory since we were like 12 or 13 years old. We were master sewists by the age of 17. We actually used to create our own school bags every year. We used to make our own design, cut them, stitch them, make them. We used to come up with ideas like putting a rainproof hoodie right in the bag so we don't have, you know, if we didn't have an umbrella. Or one time we put a bag or waterproof or a puncture-proof bag in the bag so we can drink water in case we were walking to school. Another time we put an alarm. So we used to have fun as kids in making the school bags, and it was just like a fun thing we learned how to be creative and so on. Came in America, as I mentioned, in 1998. I started working and going to school to study as a computer science. hated it. I did not like it by any means. On the weekends, I used to cut grass for a jewelry store owner. And he asked me if I'm really good using my hands. And I mentioned to him that I consider myself a bit of a crafty guy. So I started going to his store, and before I know it, within like a month, I was working on jewelry jobs and fixing stuff and like working on pieces. It wasn't really too creative because, you know, I don't know how many of you guys right now in here are or have worked as an actual bunch jeweler, but once you, or when you work as a bench jeweler, majority of the time you're just doing the same thing over and over, like ring sizing, soldering or whatever. So you don't get to really explore your creativity. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to do that. So in 2003, while reading in a newspaper, actually in the store, I saw an ad for a jewelry and metal program, actually a BFA, like a Bachelor of Fine Arts, right? And honestly, I didn't know that this kind of thing existed. I had, coming from Lebanon, everyone is an engineer or a, you know, computer scientist or a doctor or whatever. I didn't know that you could actually get a bachelor degree in fine arts or just in arts or to be a jeweler, which was, right? So I went and I checked it out. It was a great, you know, it was the studio was brand new, everything was great. So I signed up right away. And this was my first project. It was basically to showcase my skill as a jeweler, because at that time I was working on a bench. It wasn't creative by any means, but the project was to cut a 5x5-inch copper plate and make a necklace out of it without using any solder, any connections, just bending, annealing, and forming. And that's what I did. Wasn't really too creative, but you know, it's something to start with. And this is basically some of the work that I did in my BFA. These are called Lebanese mafia rings, and this is the lentil soup time, which was just a whole watch that I made out of sterling silver at that time. And this is basically when I start to kind of explore a little bit of, you know, making what I wanted, right? Not just doing what the customer asked me to do. So this was kind of breaking the jail that my creativity was in it. And this is my first piece that allowed me to go to SNAG. And it was in Tampa, Florida. It was a great trip, and I met great people at that time. I think some of the people I met were like Alan Revere, I believe Andy Cooperman, Justin Johnson, I think his last name is, make knives, like a whole bunch of people. And I was like, wow, like there is a whole new world that I've never explored before, because by that time I had been only exposed to the fine jewelry and a little bit of art jewelry in the Grand Rapids area, but didn't know any of this existed. So I did my BFA thesis in 2006. This is me in front of the wall that I built. I built a whole setup with everything you see in this picture pretty much was done by me. The showcases, the images, I didn't make the suit, I didn't make the lamps, but you know what I mean, right? So I did that. There was a great reception for it. And these are couple of the pieces that I did at that time. They weren't really too much far out there, but they were on a play of like making your own pieces, but using precious material at that time. Because I was looking into possibly going into like the fine art or the precious metals selling pieces and, being able to create different designs, different from what was out there in the jewelry stores. The only issue is by the time 2006, 2007, metal prices were starting to go up in price. So I lucked out. I did my thesis in gold and silver and white gold. But after that, things just went crazy. Like metal or gold at that time was $300 an ounce. And as you guys know, it started going up from there, right? Post-undergraduate work is basically when I start creating a lot of pieces, and most of the time, actually, I would create these pieces and I sell them. But sometimes, because gold at that time started going up in price, that actually limited the ability for me to create these pieces. So I was actually trying to use the CAD in a different way, where it allowed me to create something before making it. So it allowed me to design something and troubleshoot most of the issues. And then if a customer likes it, I'll make it and sell it. So the one on the left was all handmade. It was CNC, the wooden piece, but then all handmade the rest. The one on the right was CAD design, but then the customer liked it, and then I was able to make it for them and I sell it. This is some other designs there too. Same one on the right hand side, you could see the black and the black diamond and the white diamond. I went cross-eyed doing this. These stones were 1.3 millimeter. I set each and every one of them. I don't know if I would do it again. Maybe I would, but still, like, it's just a lot of work. And for anyone who sets stones, and when the stones are really small, it gets tedious and really it gets stressful. Some other pieces there too. And at that time, this allowed me to really kind of explore different shapes, different designs. And during that period, I actually wanted to start probably doing some commercial shows, right? So I would go to these shows, exhibit my pieces, and jewelry store owners will come in, and if they like what I have, they will buy them and they will take them with them and so on. So I did that for quite a while, and it was good, but it didn't really, some of my pieces were a little bit out there for some of the market, so it didn't really work. I needed like a more different venue, and I wasn't able to do that. This is an image of the booth and my wife helping me in the booth there too. And when that happened, or during that time, I actually came up with a jewelry fine line called Intersecting Hearts. It allowed me to basically create these engagement rings, but they were connected to a story. It was about the idea of two people coming together. If you guys notice the two hearts there, and the two hearts intersect midway, and they will create that little symbol that kind of represented like a new start, a new beginning, a new relationship. So the idea was very marketable. It was very nice. It was very good. And that's when I started doing all these designs. And I'm going to show you just a couple designs from that line. And I did a lot of shows with that. I went to jewelry shows. I went to like places like Florida, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Chicago. And it was good. I did okay with the line. The only issue, to be honest with you, is it happened also during the recession, and not a lot of jewelry stores were buying new products. They wanted to sell what they have, and at that point, gold was still going up. Like gold was already up, but it was going up to like $1,300 and $1,400 and $1,500 an ounce, which jewelry store owners didn't want to sometimes do that, and they didn't want to really buy. So I still have the line. The only difference is I don't sell at the shows anymore, because each one of these shows would cost me anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 each one of them, every show I made, because the cost of the show was about 4 to 5. Then I need to travel, I need to eat, and when I go there, I can't go by myself. I have to take someone with me to help me. And what will happen by doing that is you cannot make them pay. You have to pay for them. So it will end up being very costly to do something like this. So I end up actually moving this line into an online shop, and that's what I sell this line right now. But by doing that, I gained a lot of experience. I did a lot of shows, as I mentioned, in Chicago, Atlanta, Florida, Washington, Columbus. I learned how to do marketing, print, social. I learned how to do my own business, like DBA, EIN, sales tax ID. I learned how to do copyright, trademark. The logos that you saw and all these designs are trademarked and copyrighted. I did website development and design, and I learned a lot about manufacturing process and outsourcing. So I'm a one person, yes, I will design these things, but I cannot also sit down and set every single stone and get every order. So I had to outsource some of my product, which I used to outsource it to Chicago. So that, helped me in making some of, the parts that I need to make. But around this all time, so from the time I graduated with my BFA till around 2000, I would say, and 15, I actually, during all this time, I was adjuncting at KCAD in Kendall College of Art and Design. I was an instructor there. I was teaching probably 1 to 2 classes every semester here and there for about, I would say, 5 to 6 years. And then I would see some, I was very interested in getting a tenure track position. And every time I wanted to, or I applied, although I had the experience, I didn't really have the MFA, paper, as you would say, which, I like one there's sometimes like, oh, but yeah, like I know what I'm talking about, but I completely understand that I needed the MFA degree, especially nowadays. So I decided that that's something I want to pursue, right? After all this time. So that's when I applied to Bowling Green University and a couple other universities. And I got accepted at Bowling Green. I go to Bowling Green and I meet Tom Muir, and I was like, okay, this is the person I want to do my BFA with. It kind of happened like literally same way my BFA. I go to my BFA, see Phil Renato, and I was like, yep, that's who I'm gonna spend my next 4 years with, right? So I go and I do my BFA, and I did my BFA at Bowling Green from 2016 till 2018. It was the perfect setup for me because it's a 2-year program. It was with Tom Muir. I got the full ride scholarship, and it was kind of close to where I live. I lived in Kalamazoo, Michigan, or to be exact for some people, in Portage, Michigan. But I lived in this area here, and within 2 hours I could be home. So on the weekends I will travel home, be with my family, and during the week I'll be in Bowling Green doing work. I did that for a couple years, and this is some of the work that I did in my BFA. This piece here is called Restrain. Actually, this piece is going tomorrow, I think. I'm gonna send it tomorrow to, there's a show called In Motion. I think Liz Clark is curating the show. And I have 2 pieces in there. This is one of the pieces. This actually is made out of silver and gold. It has the tiniest universal hinges you will see. I don't know, we'll probably ask Tom this. He might confirm it for us, but it is super tiny. They are made out of gold. And this is actually, this ring will close and open when you turn the sides. And the reason it's called Restrain is because I tend to fire really quickly back at people, and I say what's on my mind. And I've been told like sometimes I need to chill out a little bit. So this is a good way to kind of hold your tongue and pinch it, and remember not to, to hold back before you say what you need to say. Other piece, and I explored actually a lot during my first year at Bowling Green, and this was some exploration with 3D printing, resin, fluorescent resin, and it worked. It looked good, but looked a little bit too gimmicky. You know, that went away. This is another piece called duck off or ducket. Basically, it's a belt buckle that if you wear it, just like it looks like a duck. We're not gonna say what it looks like also too, but if you push this little tiny feathers that come out here, the whole thing will actually snap open, revealing, sorry, the finger, hopefully no one get offended by this, but revealing the finger in there and basically telling the people to, you know, back off a little bit and step away from you. I should be wearing this right now, actually, considering what's going on with the pandemic. But so yeah, this is, you know, very mechanically challenging. Not that it's overly complicated, but because there is, it was like big at the same time, and it has to be functional and sturdy and good and wearable. So, and one of the things I really pride on having is problem solving any issue I have. One of the, in the first year, we had a class with Tom Ewer that is eyewear. That, going in that class, I was actually very, I'm not gonna say afraid, but hesitant. I was like, eyewear, I don't know if I know how to design eyewear. Like, I don't know, I've never done it before. Like, you know, this is more of a craft or whatever. But oh my God, I think this is the best class I've ever had. I love that class. I loved it. It was great. I think, or not I think, I know that I got some really good work out of this. And some of the parts or pieces that I was able to produce, I actually sold, I sold quite a number of them. And I really like the work that came out of this. I'm very proud of the work that came out of this, the finish, the design, the conceptuality of it all, everything. It was very well-rounded projects. I think I ended up doing 5, and I think we were supposed to do like 3. This is another one here too. This is powder coated. I see, actually Sally is, I only have like 4 people here on my screen, and Sally is one of them. And Sally actually ended up buying one of these. So, but yeah, like this here, like you wear them, they're beautiful. I love it. And I have a couple other people who have that. This is another piece. This piece actually encoded in a pig's eye. It's a commentary on, you know, who we have in the office. In a pig's eye, theoretically means like everything you say is basically bull. I'm not gonna finish the sentence, but it's, if you notice, like the whole thing works. I actually made this piece kind of like a challenge for me to print all of it in just 3 pieces. Like all I had to do is literally enter a hinge or a wire in this hinge here and a wire here, and this thing is wearable. So this was the challenge for me on this piece. And this piece here was the last piece I did in my first year. Credit goes to Jim Cotter. He came in, he did a demo for us with concrete. And I love concrete. And we'll talk about that why in a second, right? But I loved the material. I loved it, loved it, loved it. And you know, while he came like around the middle of the semester, and I was like, how can I use this in one of my pieces? And at that time, we were obviously taking the eyeglass or eyewear class course. And I was like, I need to involve this in there. And the project was like, you need to come up with something as a facade, right? And I was like thinking, I was like, oh, how sometimes people are a facade, like you need, I remember why I came up with this idea. Woohoo, yes. So I I had an issue in Bowling Green, like at the university there. I had a fight with someone. We're not gonna go why. We're just gonna go with they are really stupid. And I decided like, oh wow, he was portraying that he was such a nice guy or whatever. Turned out to be he's an a-hole. So I didn't wanna, and the project was like to create a facade, and I was like, wow, this is a great way to express this. And these glasses, if you look at them at the beginning, they look very nice and clean. The further you go back in the glasses, like if you start here and you go back, you're gonna start seeing like bullet holes and some damage and messed up stuff or whatever. So that's basically what these glasses were. But I enjoyed working with with concrete so much that I left Bowling Green, and I went back home that summer, and the whole summer, like, how am I gonna use this in my thesis work? Like, what am I gonna do to make this work? And this is what happened. I actually, the whole summer I was thinking about it, like what I'm gonna do and refine it and work more and do experiments and so on. And I came in 27, end of 2017, I think. And basically it allowed me to, let me see here. Can you guys still see can you still see? Or no, did it go away?
Yeah, it went away.
It went away. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, hold on. Oops, sorry. Okay. Oops, sorry. Let me, why is this happening? Is it still away?
Yeah, it's not up yet.
Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Sorry.
I think you'll have to share the screen all over again.
Yeah. But oh my God. Come on. Ah, there we go. I couldn't see the screen. Okay. All right. Share. Okay. Whew. All right. I think we're back. All right. Is it okay, guys? Can you see it or no?
Yeah, we've got the whole screen up if you want to hit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay. So these images are basically from Lebanon. This is where I grew up. This is where I spend the majority of my life, or half of my life, is in places where we lived in buildings were completely damaged, completely destroyed, and they were like literally bullet ridden, bombs in them. And no matter how much they were damaged and destroyed, if you guys look at some of the images, you will notice that people still lived in them. People still operate in these buildings. They still function, they still work, and people really that's all what they had. So it's either do or die, I guess, right? So so I knew that I wanted to create vessels, because to me, the buildings that we lived in, they were vessels. We were people living in buildings, and vessels are things that contain things, right? So this is what basically ended up happening is I end up doing or starting to create these vessels that will represent where I lived in. So this is some of the stuff that I started doing, basically, which all right. Is the screen still good? Okay, good. So this is one of the pieces that I did, and I'm gonna talk about how I did this piece here. One of the things that I wanted to make sure is that I wanted to make sure all my vessels are completely functional. So if you notice in this vessel here, this vessel is called, come see what I have. Basically, if you notice that there's two pieces of, there are two colors in there. I'm actually want to get some notes. Travis, do you know how can I see my notes on my, you cannot see them?
No. So yeah, I don't think you can do presenter view and have
Okay,
it so you can
that's
see
fine.
some notes.
All right. So we'll go without my notes. I still have a lot to say about them, but it might be a little bit not in order, which is fine. So if you guys notice, there are two colors in this here. For me to be able to do concrete with two colors, I had to do a lot of experimentation. The reason is because I didn't want to just paint these designs on this piece. I want to be actually inlaid in there. So I end up creating, or excuse me, working with a lot of different material to be able to create or change different, make different colors for the concrete. So initially I started with glazes, which worked really well. It's an amazing thing to be able to do that with the glaze. The only issue, glazes are expensive. I didn't know that at the beginning, but when I started buying the glazes, I was like, oh, I need to find an alternative. And to give you the heads up, basically now what I use is mason stains. Mason stains will do the same effect, but it's less expensive. It's not super cheap, but it's like, it's about $14 per, I don't know, like quarter pound of it, but will last you a lot. So to be able to do that piece, I had to come up with some really creative ideas for molding. So one of the things with concrete is that it hardens within 10 to 15 minutes when you're working on it, right? So I need to come up with an idea or a plan where I can make my pieces, but then I'll be able to pull the mold out and then use the concrete and make my vessels that I needed to make. So this is some of the examples where I have the molds where I luckily using 3D allowed me to create one-time molds, and I will be able to explore or make all these molds and then pull the mold out. Now, as you guys know, these plastics are not flexible, right? So, but the way they are made is by melting, they melt the little tip or they melt the little plastic, filament, and then it will extrude it to make the molds that you want. So the only thing I need to do after I poured my concrete in there is to use the heat gun, and I'll be able to pull out the mold. So the issue was when I was making these complicated pieces, I had to come up with really complicated molds because concrete also, it breaks a little bit easier than, when it's thinner, right? So this is when it's put together, and this is, you see the concrete in there. When the concrete hardens, I pull it out. This is an example of it there. And this is the piece coming out. So if you guys notice, as I mentioned before, one of the things that was super important to me is for the vessels to retain water and be functional, the same way the buildings were functional and retained water retained people in them the way in Lebanon, right? They need to be made out of concrete the same way buildings that are made in Lebanon. And the third thing is that they had to be shot because it was more of the act of destruction after spending all this time making these pieces. So for me to be able to do that, in some areas, I had to kind of create some hidden walls that allows me to, when I shoot it, allows part of it to retain water and part of it be destroyed. So if you guys remember in the beginning of this, when I showed you this vessel here, if you notice that it was damaged and broken. So this little area where it's damaged and broken is this little compartment that you see here. And when I put the two pieces together, there's gonna be like one open area from the top, and that little area here that you see is gonna be closed, and that's what I'll end up shooting. It will make sense in a second when I show you the video of it. For me to be able to put the tile in there or make it look like it's styled, I actually came up with the idea of cutting vinyl, putting the vinyl on top of it. Once I do that, because vinyl is flexible, it allows me to go on the surface of the part. I'll be able to sandblast, and the vinyl will protect the concrete. And after I pull it out, you will have this beautiful texture in there. It was nice by itself as is like that. I didn't really need to do any more there, but I wanted to look like it's all really tiny little tiles representing the Middle Eastern, you know, look that you have there in it. So that's where I would take concrete from a different color. I would actually wet the piece. I will make it like, you know, all wet, and I will mix concrete. I will squeegee all that concrete in there, and I will let it dry. The process itself takes a long time, because every step you need to do is you need to figure out, am I doing it wet or dry? And you need to be very careful with every step you're doing. And if you mess up a step, or there's something you need to do before the other one, you're gonna have to start all over again. So I had a lot of planning. I had to do a lot of thinking of how I need to make this work. And this is where everything comes together. After the concrete dries, I will actually re-wet it again, and I will resand it. And it is absolutely the most beautiful thing you will ever do. If you had the chance to take my workshop, I know I'm selling myself right now here, but please do, because when you work with the concrete and you do your own thing, obviously, and you start sanding down, and the texture, whatever you have under the concrete comes out, oh my gosh, it's like beautiful. It's amazing. It's so satisfying. It's so fun seeing the contrast in the two colors, and it's just really fun to do, right? So I will sand the whole thing down, and when it's done, this is the end result. So this, every one of these vessels, to be honest with you, took anywhere between 2.5 months to 6 months to finish and complete. From you know, working on the design to figuring out how the mold is gonna be, making it the first time, and then it's breaking because I didn't think about, you know, certain issue or whatever. But anyway, after doing all the work, if you guys know, if you know me, I'm a control freak. I love to control every single aspect. You saw my glasses, right? Like, you saw how my glasses are all nice and tight. And this is how I want my vessels. But at the same time, this was a little bit more therapeutic for me, where I wanted to be able to relinquish control of anything I've done, right? So for me to finish these pieces and put details on them, I wanted to shoot them. Why? Because I wanted to be able to relinquish control. And the second you pull the trigger on something, you lost control. You don't have control over whatever you're doing. The bullet is gonna go do what it wants to do. So what I did was, this is a video, you're gonna see it here in a second, where I fired after I finished all the work and spent all the time doing it. And your heart basically stops. There you go. It just fired. And you break it. This piece, I had to actually shoot it, I think, 5 times to kind of get the look that I wanted, or break it more. And with every time I shot it, my heart stops every single time. It's like, and I shoot it, right? So, go. Where's the next? There you go. So after I shoot the piece, basically I would go in, I will salvage some of the pieces in there. And this is on the right-hand side, you guys can see some of the detail where I would actually re-drill and rework the piece and include the rebar in there. And if you guys notice that it's gilded, gold gilded from the inside with like 24 karat parts. The name of the piece, it says "Come see what I have." Kind of talks about. I'm not really generalizing, but a lot of people in the Middle East, obviously the Gulf areas, not where I'm at, but in the Gulf area, they have a lot of money and they're like all about like, oh, come see what I have. I have gold rails and like, you know, all tiled houses and marble and all that fancy stuff. So this was on that. But the reason I wanted to also show a little bit of modern designs in my vessels are because in Lebanon right now, and I'm so sorry, I actually, this image cropped here and I changed this slide the last minute and I didn't notice that it cropped it. There is a super modern building right next to this building. And I'm talking that building is made by Zaha Hadid, which she's actually dead right now, died, I think, with a heart attack, but she is an amazing architect, like super cool work, right? And her building is crazy modern, all like very laced, intricate. And next to it, which is this building here that you see, it's still, you could still see here where my mouse is, you could see the bullet holes in there. It's not as prominent, but you could still see it. And the damage is in it still. So I'm going to show you some other examples in here too. This is another piece called Tin Roof. The lid functions up and down. All of you see, everything you see there is pretty much fabricated. There you go. This is a detailed shot. This is I really love this vessel, this piece. This is called Step Away from the Window. When we were kids, we would be in the house and then there would be like, you know, some people shooting outside and gunfires or whatever. And as kids, you know, you don't know what danger is, right? You just go run to the window and you want to see who's firing and can you see it? And, you know, sometimes if it's at night, you will see the streaks of the bullets, which, you know, kind of like fireworks, sad but true, you know. So we would go see that, and a lot of times, a lot of kids actually used to be dead or die from stray bullets because people didn't know where they were firing or whatever. So your parents, the second they will fire, you would run as a kid, but your parents would be like, hey, stay away from the window or step away from the window, whatever. So this is that. And the details, I think I have a detail shot here where you could see this is where the bullet actually came out and broke the piece. And this is another part of it here. And you could see some rebar in there. And you will see actually a rod or a bar going from side to side, holding the whole, all the concrete together. And mind you, please keep in mind that all of these vessels are actually functional and retain water in them. That's the challenge that I put for myself, where they need to, you know, where the engineering and the problem solving needs to be. This is called Grandma's Gate. This is inspired from a gate that my grandma had in her old house. It was a steel gate and we used to climb it. And again, as kids, you don't know what danger is. And it was about like 3 meters high. It was a high gate and we would like sit on the top of it. You know, you fall off of that, you're pretty much gone, and we didn't care. And again, the vessels, you guys can see the char of the, you know, the bullet or the nozzle up here still on the piece. This is the top lid. This piece is called B Plus by the Sea. This is made out of, I've never actually counted how many pieces up there, but this is enamel lid. Each one of these pieces is hand fabricated, soldered, and placed in on that lid there. This took the most amount of work. I think it took like a total of like 100 or 130 hours, something like that, the whole thing to finish. It was crazy. Funny story on this, when I was doing it the first time, I did this really kind of bright yellow because that's what I was envisioning in my head. And I showed it to my colleagues at that time, and they were like, oh, no, it's too yellow, change it. So I ended up using some different glazes at that time to change the color. And I didn't really like it. It was like really like puke yellow, I guess, where to say it, right? I wasn't interested in it, and I put it on the side a little bit. And at one time I was just looking on Facebook, and somebody from Lebanon, believe it or not, posted an image literally of a house on the beach, which again, Byblos is a super old city. It's on the beach, of a house on the beach where the walls of the house were literally this yellow, like no joke. And the roof of it was red, so mine is a little brown, but I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not gonna listen to anyone. I'm gonna listen to my gut and just go with this really vivid yellow and do this piece. So I ended up doing it this way. And I was very happy with the result. This is another piece. Do you want some rose water? Where my town, where I'm from, is actually, we do rose water. That's what we're famous for. Where we literally stand on a tree, and when the orange blossom is going, we pick it and we boil it, and then we get the essence of rose water in it. This piece here, the detail that you see, it's CNC'd. This part here is shot, and these are actual gold wires in there that's been ripped by the bullet. And they act as rebars. This is too high for me, where this is absolutely the hardest mold I've done. It took me forever to figure out how I would be able to pull the mold out of this piece. I was very happy with the end result, and I learned a lot from this. And I learned if you have a project in hand that you don't know how to finish or fix or whatever, put it on the side, let it sit, and then come back to it, because eventually you will have like a epiphany or whatever you want to call it, and like come up with an idea to solve your issue. Because I honestly gave up on that. Like I was thinking like, okay, it's not gonna work. And one night I was like sitting working on a computer at like 2 at night, and then I came up with the idea of how to create the mold for this piece. This is a detailed shot of it. From there, I started doing some of these brooches that some of you guys have it. I really enjoy doing them, and that's basically what I teach in my workshop. And I did actually a workshop at Touchstone last year, where we had a few students up there, and the students loved it. They learned so much, and that's what, they enjoyed the process, and they thought concrete, like you never think of concrete as using it as a medium to do jewelry with, but when it comes with the colors and the way you could work it, you could do so much with this. This piece here was done just recently. I think I finished it just in end of 2019. I'm happy to say now that this piece is going to be in Nicholas Estrada bracelet book. It got in the book, and it's made out of concrete, fine silver. All of the work that you see there is soldered, and it's fine silver. Super fun to do. I use tons of these little bricks, the fire bricks, to actually you could probably still see it. You see how I dig the holes in the brick to be able to lay these pieces in. And actually I end up buying a little miter saw to cut these at an angle, because this, well, the first time I did this, I didn't have the miter saw. I cut all of these by hand. I was like, yeah, I can do it. It's only whatever, I think it's like 40 or 50 pieces in there, right? But my next project that I'm going to show you, which is, that's what I actually kind of finished. I started this project before the pandemic, but I finished it just at the beginning of the pandemic, is this piece here, Degrees of Degradation. And this piece is actually is going to, or it is already in Rhode Island, Bannister? Oh, dang it. I think it's called Bannister Gallery. It's in the Imagine Peace Now show, or it will be in October. But, and if you guys got the Snag magazine, it was like not on the cover, inside of the cover, which is good. You know, it's still probably need one of my pieces to be on the cover, but we'll talk about that later. So this piece, I really enjoyed doing it. And the idea of this piece, if you guys see that there's the gun and there's 3 of these circles, which basically represent the victim with any gun violence. The second circle, it represents the family of the victim. And the third circle, which is the bigger circle, represents the community where the victim is, right? So with any gun violence, there's always 3 degrees of, you know, I would say effectiveness, and not in a good way of, I guess the better word for it is degradation, right? So this, if you notice that the parts are broken at the end, because each one of these was a whole by itself, as a whole circle, whole community, whole person. And when the bullet goes through, that's basically what happens. This here is a piece that I'm working on still. It should have been done, and this should have went to Snag. And sadly to say that because of COVID or the pandemic, I needed I wasn't able to have some access to a few machines that I need to use to be able to finish it. It is actually halfway done, and it should be coming soon. This is a really cool project that I've been doing for quite a while, and it's basically a project for jewelers to wear. The idea came, or concept is basically, if you go to a dentist or orthodontist or whatever, these people, they usually, when they are working, they wear a ring and they put their burrs in a sponge ring, right? But obviously, as a jeweler, you don't want to wear that. You want to be able to wear something fancy that represents your work and so on. So I came up with this really cool ring that you would be able to wear it. And like, if you're working, you just take the burr out and do it. I hope you don't do that, because that's going to be very, like, you know, cool. So I hope you don't really destroy it and actually use it. But so yeah, and the last thing I want to talk about is, during the pandemic, as I mentioned to Travis, is the fact that I was actually, I came up with this really cool tool that is actually a saw blade holder, and I've been selling it on my website, and it sells on AutoFray or Rio Grande. But what's really keeping me busy is this other studio that I have that actually currently has 9 3D printers that they work day and night. They literally print 24/7 nonstop. I made them work this way, where they make these pieces for me, and you know, each piece take almost 12 hours to finish. It will, once it's done, I pack it and I ship it out and I send it, and I cannot keep them in stock. It's a sublate holder that I made and it works really well. And this is how it looks like. That's keeping me busy for now. And last fun thing, or I don't know if I should say fun, different thing I did was I actually printed a lot of, since I had the 3D printers and there was a big need for them, in collaboration with Kendall College and Phil Renato in Grand Rapids. Actually, I was printing a lot of these masks, but we were doing 2 at every machine, and each 2 take about an hour, right? And I could not spend all day sitting next to this machine just pulling. I mean, I had stuff to do. So it's not entirely my idea by any means. There are people who came up with this, but I actually refined the process. And you guys can see the video here where I made it in a way where the printers actually will automate. I automated the printers where they will peel off the mask. So they will print 1 mask at a time. They will peel it off, push it out on the piece of paper. Then the machine will come out, they will drop it, and then it will restart. So every 24 hours, and that's the second machine going on right now. So every 24 hours, instead of me spending maybe 10 hours or 5 hours to print these masks, I made it every 24 hours, it will print 24 masks. So it was printing literally nonstop for like, I think like a week and a half or 2 weeks. So we produced about almost 800 masks in a week and a half or 2 weeks. And we donated all of them to local health organization next to me and next to Phil up there. And this is the printers going very high speed. And I think this is it. Let me see. Yeah, that's the mask. That's me. And this is it.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great. I always love, I don't know, I love hearing about your work and kind of the different things you do. The one question that came in that I am really curious about too is like when making those concrete pieces and you're shooting them, how many like iterations of it did you have to make in order to get it right? Did you like wreck some making it?
I have 2 big box, like you know the big boxes, the plastic, the black and yellow boxes. I have 2 big boxes filled. One of them is filled with like broken concrete or samples or all of that, and the other one is actually printed material. So let me show you. Actually, I have an example here. So this is an example, if you guys remember that yellow piece. So this is an example of how I would 3D print it, right? And I will pour the concrete in here. And when I pour the concrete, I will let it sit dry or cure. And when it cures, I'll use the heat gun and it will peel the material. So if the piece is big enough, and in this case, for instance, it is open from the bottom and from here, so you can get the inside material and outside material. So for me to make this a vessel, all I did was like put it back flat and I poured the concrete in like a thin layer, and that created the bottom. So now I have a vessel. The only issue is like the last one, the red one, if you guys remember with the glass part, that part, if you have a, that part is too small from either side. I was not able to pull out the mold. And that's why actually when I gave up till I figured out a different way to make a mold. Because that thing was like super intricate and very delicate. But yeah, I've done some serious, let's put it this way. In my second year of my MFA, I literally would go to sleep around 2 or 3 and wake up at like 8 or 9 maximum and go back to class and then work nonstop. It was like this nonstop all the time. It was crazy. It was crazy.
A lot of trial and error to be able to,
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
The one thing I really like, I loved how you kind of started with kind of like the more production stuff you do. And then it really seems like once, you talked about how you didn't, you wanted to get that tenure job, but you didn't have the MFA. And then I feel like when you went and got an MFA, your work really changed and took like a lot more of a conceptual work.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Conceptual idea behind it. I mean, and I would love to kind of hear, I don't know, just your thoughts on like what it like. There's always this talk about like, is an MFA worth getting? Like, what do you actually get? Because you can learn the skills outside of a program, but what does like the program itself really offer, and how does that help really push your work forward?
Well, it did. Like when we go, so here's the thing: as bench jewelers, or as jewelers or metalsmiths, right? No matter how much you know and no matter how good you are, there's always something new. There's always a new technique, right? So you can't learn it all at school. But when you go to school, you learn techniques, and at least this is my experience. But what you learn is the ability to speak to your colleagues, and you learn from them. You learn how they try to, think conceptually, and you learn about different artists and how they thought about things and how they solved their issues, and visual keys and all that stuff. So I can tell you that I grew conceptually way more in my MFA than before. With my BFA, I did learn about conceptual stuff, but I was so intertwined with the, I guess, commercial side of things, right? And I felt insecure in jumping into the art world of things, that, oh, what if I made like crazy stuff and nobody liked it? And I did. And if you remember, like I showed the image where my wife was helping me in the booth, I had some pieces there that they are not really conceptual. They are just design pieces. And to us, like conceptual people, like they are like, oh, they look so commercial. But for the commercial people, they looked so much out there, they didn't want to even touch it. So I'm like, I was stuck in the middle where like, okay, like here's the thing. I made these really cool earrings. They are made out of concrete, super light, amazing, right? I agree. And I made them. And here's the thing. If I go to a jewelry store and I tell a jewelry store, hey, you want to sell my concrete earrings for $80? They would literally laugh their double scribble asses at me. They would laugh so hard at me. They were like, you want me to sell, concrete earrings for $200? There's no way. They won't even grab the concept of how would this work, right? However, I go to a show or an art show or to Snag where, I did, like I did the marketplace that they have or whatever. And I could sell these earrings. I sold these earrings there, right? So to them, so this is where, to me, when I went into my master's, I felt like so much more comfortable in my work. And I found my audience, so I could create stuff and I'll be very confident. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I like to do. And this is what I want to do. You like it? Great. You don't like it? I will say something else, but I know that, I want to keep it PG a little bit here. So I'll be like, I will tell them what, duck it. Or
Yeah,
duck
I mean,
off. I'll tell them duck off.
I feel like in any medium, there's so many different facets of like work. I mean, I work in clay, but even pots, like I look at a ton of pots. It's like what I can really relate to. You have like production potters, then you have like kind of the more art, but there's like a whole range of like in different areas you can kind of fall into in any medium,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, since I've been at Touchstone, it's been really great. Like I've honestly fell in love with like this, I guess, small metals world. I don't know even the way everybody kind of goes by, but I like really love, it feels really similar in a lot of ways. And it's like not like anything I really ever got. Like I never took any classes in college. It's never, I'm not like a jewelry person. That's always what I thought it was. And kind of getting to learn, especially like seeing your work is like so interesting to me and really brings me into kind of like appreciating it a lot more than, you know, I always thought it was jewelry. Like, oh, I mean, I do wear rings, but not really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love seeing that work that really like brings all of that into it. It's like really sculptural, but it's still, you're all about function. I mean, you're making pots. It's really easy for me to relate to some of that stuff, which is, I just think a great way to kind of bring people into like objects that are usually a little foreign to them, and it really like ties into all the other work you're doing. And I really, really appreciate that about your work.
Thank you.
And just that you tackle so many things that you kind of talked about how much you sleep. I feel like you probably get like 2 hours of sleep a night in order to do everything that you do.
It's what was the last question?
I feel like you probably just don't sleep to get everything done. You are like
no,
people
I do. So here's one thing I'm very proud of is and Tom actually, right? Tom Ewer always used to tell me that. He's like, Michael, he knows like I'm super efficient. Like I have a plan, and here's where I say CAD has been amazing to me. A lot of people might disagree, but I use CAD as a planning tool, as a tool that allows me to troubleshoot every single aspect of what I'm gonna do. So when it comes time for me to do something, I have everything in order, right? So talk about the vessels, right? No matter, I mean, we could probably sit down and argue all day, but I will challenge anyone who would like to use concrete, not clay, concrete, which you have 15 minutes max, maybe from the time you put water in it before it hardens, to really have it set in there, and to be able to make the molds or the designs without a CAD. And I'm not saying like it's not possible, it is. For some of the stuff that I've done, you could make few molds and you can make them. But the last piece that I did, which was in the red concrete, right? I don't care what you say. I don't care what anybody says. It's not possible to make without a computer or a 3D printer. And again, the computer is not doing the work for me. I spent countless nights and days and hours moving every single click and mouse or command and knowing exactly what I need to use to be able to do it. It's just a tool that allows me to enhance and make my work slightly elevated. I mean, it's a pen, but it's a very fancy, pen. It's a really, pen that really allows you to be very creative with it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think technology is becoming such a prominent thing in the craft field, which was always, it's like, how do you use it, and how do you use it as essentially a tool? I mean, I've seen some pretty bad things where people made like terrible mugs that probably would have been easier and faster to like hand make, but like when you're using it in a way that makes sense and it's working, there's no way it's like shortening your process, shortening the time to do things. Some things just aren't, you could spend, a life in this one piece that you could, essentially, the idea is in your head, but you can't do it without, getting through to make it. I think that's where technology makes like a really good point. And you really are bridging the gap of like how it's used and, you could make all those handmade molds, but it's going to take you 10 times the time to actually do that.
Exactly. I for me, computer is just a tool that I use, and it allows, like what I tell people usually when sometimes I teach CAD, actually, the one in Touchstone got canceled this year, but what I tell the people when I'm doing the CAD workshops too, right, is this is not gonna do work for you. You will need to do the work yourself, but the CAD, use the CAD and explore it to see if this is something that will benefit you in your work. And if it does, great, continue using it. If it doesn't, you don't have to. You know, it's not a necessity. Nobody's gonna hit you on the head, say, hey, you have to use a CAD. No, I mean, again, I like to teach it because I like people to explore and, you know, like figure out a way to use it in their work and allow them to create more pieces and more parts and so on. So yeah, I like it.
I mean, this is a great time to mention that Michael will be teaching an intro CAD class at Touchstone.
Oh yeah.
We'll be teaching it this summer, but obviously due to the
Touchstone. Sign up if you need to.
We had to cancel it, but we are really excited we got him on the schedule for next year. I don't remember the date off the top of my head. I believe
it's like
early July.
Like now, I think it should be going like June 16 or something like that. I think something around this time. Yeah.
But that is something you're interested in. I mean, again, it's a great tool to have. I mean, it's funny you came in with like a science background. I was going to do architecture and went into math and science, and I ended up falling into this weird world of stuff too. Yep. So I think it is an awesome skill to have, to be able to understand the programming that goes into it and how you can bring it into your work is great. So, I mean, I think it was great to have you on here. I really love hearing your work. As I said, I think your work has helped me really appreciate the like small metals. I'm sure it's a way broader term than small metals world, which I think is awesome. And it's been great to get to know you over the years since I've been at Touchstone. So
thank you.
Thanks. For those of you that are joining us, we do have the next 2 weeks we already have planned. So next week, the same time, Friday at 7 o'clock, we've got Jordan Lamoth, who is a bladesmith from way up in New York State in the middle of nowhere. I don't know the exact town. I just know his internet is absolutely awful. So we've been making sure we can actually have him in his studio to be doing demos and talking about his work with us. And then the following week, we are actually switching from Friday nights to Thursday night. Same exact time, 7 o'clock on Thursday nights. I think the first one is June 28th. Sounds right off the top of my head. I'm not 100% positive on that date, but we're going to have the Phelps brothers, who are two figurative ceramic artists from Cleveland area, and their work is absolutely amazing. They are the most hilarious people you will ever encounter, and they're just amazing. I'm really excited to kind of hear them talk as well. So these have been great. We now all appreciate everybody tuning into these every week, and it's been great to get to sit down and hear kind of all of these things about everyone's work. So thanks, Michael, for coming out and doing this for us, and I definitely look forward to having you in Phelps, or June 25th, not 8th. That was wrong timing on my point. So thank you all, and hopefully we see you next week.
Thank you guys for coming.
Everybody have a good night and a great weekend.